It's been hectic at home and work lately. I've been dealing a lot with equipment breakdowns and finally convinced my boss to institute a maintenance plan and not wait until something breaks to fix and service it at the same time. I spent ages gathering all the necessary data to present to him. I convinced him that the way he was operating was a false economy. For several weeks, I spent most of my evenings studying breakdown statistics and maintenance plans. True to form, I stopped work on weekends to spend time with my wife, Caroline, my hot 42-year-old MILF. She was busy at work, too. She was an admin assistant at a local college that was going through some big changes. They had an Ofsted Requires Improvement report. Ofsted are the UK's school governing bodies, and they had made every effort to find out where they needed to improve and start an improvement program, so she was busy too, and sometimes worked late at work and also at home in the evenings. But she, like me, took weekends off so we could be with each other and our son Jason when he came home from university with his girlfriend. I looked at the weather forecast for next weekend, and it was good. The end of a long, wet, windy, and cold winter was approaching. We were both working hard, so I decided to surprise my favorite person. We have a stationary motorhome on the south coast near Christchurch in a holiday park. At the moment, it has been mothballed. Taking it out of preservation after winter is a hassle, so I decided to take a day off work, my boss owed me at least, and get it ready for the weekend, and then surprise Caroline with a weekend away for the two of us. It wouldn't take me long to decan the motorhome and air out the bedding myself. In fact, I'd canned it myself the previous fall. It was much easier to do these things without having the ladies around. I talked to my boss, told him I had Tuesday off, and explained the reason, in case Caroline called. I brought my laptop with me and could cover things from there if I needed to. Good thing the internet coverage was excellent. Since the stretch of highway was fairly empty, the speed was good. It didn't close for the winter, and a few brave folks used it year-round. A couple years ago, the whole family, including Jason and his girlfriend, went there for Christmas and New Year's, and it was great. I told Caroline that I had an early meeting, so I would leave early and miss most of the traffic. I also told her that I might be home late because of the traffic. I made it to the motorhome in plenty of time and went about my usual business. I left the keys to the motorhome at home on a hook so Caroline wouldn't notice they were missing and ask about them. That would spoil the surprise. I even picked a bunch of roses, intending to leave them in the house so it would smell nice when we came up for the weekend. It can get a little musty after winter, and I know she loves roses. There was a spare key hidden under the motorhome, and if I needed it, the spare would be in the precinct office. But I wanted to check our spare, since it had been sitting outside all winter, and drop some oil on it. It was in a little box with a magnet attached to the bottom of the house. I always put it in the same place. In the early days when I came back from the pub, I had to crawl under the house. It was dark and dirty and smelly, and none of us were sober then. There was an awful lot of giggling going on. So I always put it in a little box in the same place so I could just crawl under the house and pull it out. We never had to use it once after that incident. Then things got a little weird. I reached under the bottom of the house, and it wasn't there. Not wanting to get dirty and sober, I used the flashlight on my phone to see where it was. It was all wrong place, wrong orientation. It was a foot or so away from where it was supposed to be, and at the wrong angle. I always put it there so it would be easier to find. Well, that was the plan. Then when I got into the house, I saw that the refrigerator was closed, and you always leave it open. Otherwise, it would stink in there. I opened the fridge expecting to see a mass of mold and a disgusting smell, but there was nothing there. And that got me thinking. The van didn't smell as musty as it had in previous years. I wonder if someone used it. My thoughts immediately drifted to Jason. But I'm sure he'd tell us, and it's a long way from his university so he could find a place closer to rest. I was a little more careful now, turning on the faucets, and a small stream of water came out, which was strange, too, because after the water was turned off in the fall, I'd drained the faucets and left them open in case the water froze and burst the pipes, and these were closed. Now even Jason knows to leave them open. Okay, now I'm a little concerned. Next was the electricity meter. I know from previous years how much it used up over the winter, and it's not that much. A quick check of the meter showed it was a lot compared to previous years. I didn't have the exact numbers with me, so I'll have to double-check when I get home. I took a picture of the meter on my phone and at the same time sent Jason a text asking if he had used the motorhome during the winter. I walked around the house with meticulous care, but nothing seemed out of place. I was wary, though. I started putting things away, pulled out all the bedding and hung it outside to air out. It was in sealed bags and had been washed before we put it away. Finished with that, I decided to make myself some coffee. It had to be black, as I hadn't brought milk with me. But that's no problem. I can drink tea or coffee without milk. I prefer it with milk, but you can do without. So, I put the kettle on, looked inside, and saw that there was some water left at the bottom. I expected it to evaporate over the winter, even if you close the lid, which it usually does. Just another thing to add to the list. I then set about wiping things down, dusting and such, while waiting for the kettle to boil. I walked over to the coffee can. It was probably expired, but it didn't matter. But it was almost full, I can't say for sure, but I think it was almost empty when we left. I checked it, and it was fine. It expired in 6 months. We try not to leave too much stuff in the motorhome for the winter. That Christmas, we had to take almost everything with us when we arrived, even the kitchen sink. One more thing to put on the list. I thought about calling Caroline, but decided against it. If there was anyone else in the house, she'd feel spoiled and wouldn't want to come here again. I had to figure it out and probably keep it to myself. Let's hope it was Jason. Either way, I'm sure she'll be busy, and I didn't want to ruin the surprise. I sorted out the motorhome and headed home, taking the roses with me. No point in leaving them there. I could give them to Caroline as a surprise. On the way out, I stopped by the company office and asked in an innocent tone if it was okay to do that. Had anyone been seen near our house lately? The staff said they hadn't seen anyone, but about once every couple weeks they noticed a fairly new red Mercedes parked near the house that they knew was empty. They thought it was odd because people who drive cars like that generally don't use the recreational parks, and it was red. They thought it must have been okay because in the winter the gate could be opened with a key, so they must have had a pass. The office staff didn't have much work to do in the winter. As I drove home, stuck in traffic, my thoughts began to wander. Who was using the house, and who would know where the key was? There were only 3 of us. While I was stuck in traffic, Jason called me. It wasn't him. I told him I thought someone had used the motorhome, but to keep it quiet. I didn't want to worry his mother. She has enough on her mind as it is to help deal with Ofsted's problem. I told him I was planning to visit the motorhome this weekend as a surprise for her. So, if it wasn't Jason, who was it? Stuck in traffic on the Salisbury exit, you give your thoughts time to wander. And that's not good. Maybe I'm reading too many stories on the internet. I started to put 2 and 2 together, but unfortunately it came out to be either 3 or 5. It wasn't me, it wasn't Jason, it could only be Caroline. But why? I started going over in my mind all the signs of someone having an affair. She didn't dress differently, she didn't rush into the shower as soon as she came in. She worked late, but I always knew it and tracked her phone. She was always where I thought she should be. Her phone wasn't always on, though, and in some parts of the college the signal didn't pick up. Our sex life was the same. Maybe it was downsized a bit because we both worked a lot. But we managed it on the weekends, even with the kinky things she liked to do. And then a plan popped into my head. As I waited outside the castle in yet another traffic jam, something I'd heard before popped into my head but thought it was good advice. Trust but verify, and sitting here I came up with a plan. Or rather, several plans on how to do it. I continued to wait and ponder. Was I spending too much time online? Was she having an affair? And why would she travel so far away since there were plenty of hotels where they could stay? But someone was taking advantage of that. It's awful when you have time to think. Your mind descends into dark alleys. But then again, I didn't think it was her. I didn't see any signs. Or was she good at hiding them? Or was I too gullible and stupid to see? Or both? Okay, the first thing to do is protect yourself. Legally, if you break up for any reason, everything is split half and half. I love this house we've lived in for the last 15 years or so, and we've made it our own. I've sweated blood over some of the work I've done, and worked long hours to pay for the things I couldn't do. And then there was my pride and joy, a maroon MGB GT V8, almost completely restored. The savings account was quite healthy, mostly due to the overtime I was getting because cars were constantly breaking down at work. If it turned out I was wrong, no harm done. That was important. My next trick was to install some cameras in the van. At the end of the week, I'd stop by the van and stop by a spy store in Southampton, where I'd buy some Wi-Fi cameras and maybe a tracking device that could be attached to her car or slipped into her purse. All the plans were taking shape in my head. First check. She had been warned that I might be home late, so I called her home phone. She answered right away, so at least she was home. She said she hadn't prepared anything for dinner as she didn't know what time I would be home. I told her I was about 10 minutes away. She offered to get me something, fish and chips, pizza, or even Chinese food. She also asked how the meeting went. I replied that it was fine, but something came up and I'll talk about it later. I asked how her day was. It was hectic, but if they put in the effort, they should be able to come up with a plan in a couple weeks. But that might mean a few more late nights. I told her I wasn't against it, just as long as we had a weekend together. Then she giggled and said she was looking forward to the weekend, and that she already had something planned for that weekend. It was really hard for me to think about the love of my life having an affair on the other end of the phone. I felt ashamed of myself and my thoughts, but I had to find out who was in the van in order for the plan to fully materialize. So, second challenge, I ordered pizza, a meat feast, my favorite, but not hers. I got home and everything was ready, even a bottle of wine, a little weird for a Tuesday, but whatever. I opened the box and she noticed it was a meat feast. I took a couple slices and put them on her plate. "Honey, you know I don't like meatballs in this dish." All that was left of the original lightness when I walked in was a grumpy tone. "Just put them in here and I'll swap you the pepperoni for them. That's what we've done before." But she's never been grumpy about it, so maybe I thought I was. Maybe I'm looking for something that isn't there. The next time she was carefully transferring a meatball from her pizza to mine, she was already halfway across the table when I started my story. "It has come to my attention that someone at your college is having an affair." She dropped the meatball on the table. I picked it up and ate it anyway. I love meatballs. "Where did you hear that?" "At a meeting I was at, someone mentioned your college, and someone named Julian had an affair with a female staff member and was caught." "There's no one named Julian at our institution. They must have made a mistake." But as she dropped the meatball, I had a doubt in my mind. If she knew something, if it was someone with the name Julian, who knows? But that's another thing to add to the list. But that was just the beginning of a list of comments that led me to where I wanted to steer the conversation. I asked her, "Do you have some sort of moral clause in your contract? For example, you can't show young, impressionable people married people having affairs. It's not up to standard." "Yeah, I think there is, but I'll have to check. Why the interest?" It just caused chaos, ruined lives. No one was left with any money. They had to split it in half and there wasn't enough for everyone. It seems they're both living in squalid apartments now. It ruined 2 marriages and 4 lives. One of them even lost his job, and they both could have. If you don't have Julian, he probably got the wrong college. But that's a little alarming, isn't it? He who cheats on his wedding vows gets half of everything. It's alleged that in their case it wasn't much. I don't know for sure, but I think her face paled slightly, and after that she didn't say much, but just continued eating her pizza with extra pepperoni and no meatballs. My hair stood up and I didn't like the feeling. We went to watch some nonsense on TV. Usually we discuss what's on there, but today there was no talking. It was something unusual. Maybe I'm reading too much into insignificant events? I don't. I just have to be careful not to get so far into investigations that I can't reconstruct them later. The next step had to be risky, but I had to take it to calm down. I noticed her glancing at her cell phone every now and then, as if she wanted to use it. It was after 9 o'clock when the phone rang, and she almost jumped out of her skin. She looked at it and said to me, "It's my sister. I have to answer it." Of course she should. Why should she make excuses? With those words, she took the phone and headed for the kitchen. This was different. I liked her sister. I liked almost all of her family, but her parents were a little weird. She usually answered the phone in my presence. We just turned down the sound on the TV, and sometimes I'd even join in the conversation. I was looking for unusual things, and now I was looking for them. I was seeing them. I turned up the volume on the TV a little, walked around the couch, and headed for the kitchen. I was going to eavesdrop. It was something I prided myself on, but I had to trust but verify. I couldn't hear well because the damn TV was on too loud, but it didn't sound like, "Sorry, honey, but we're busy right now. I'll call you tomorrow. Bye." It was too fast. I waited, and then I heard the words I'd been dreading. I heard her say, "I think he guessed it. Don't come near me tomorrow." There was a pause. "He's acting inadequate. I can't lose him." Another pause. "No promotion is worth my marriage." I had heard enough. I returned to the couch and continued watching TV. I had no idea what was on. She came back. I asked how her sister was doing, and she said she was fine. Young Emily had scraped her knee, but that was quite common. She was a bit of a tomboy. Then she clung to me and hung on to me. She whispered in my ear, "I think it's time for us to go to bed, if you know what I mean." Oh, shit. I tried my best, but it's hard for me to keep going, thinking about the fact that someone else might have shared this woman, but I managed. When we were done, holding her in my arms, I said, "That was a little weird for the middle of the week. What's gotten into you?" "I just love my man, and lately we haven't done much during the week." I decided to do a little digging. "So it's not guilt?" I expected a retort, but nothing came. I left for work in the morning as usual, but I called my boss and told him I had another day off, but I'd be in touch if anything important came up. The doubts in my mind were enough. I went to the local second-hand store and picked up a used smartphone. A quick trip to the library to use their computer and open my Gmail and Hotmail email accounts. Next stop was the local supermarket where I bought a cell phone with a SIM card, all registered to my new email accounts. It didn't cost much, and if she was innocent, I could lose all the costs. If she was guilty, however, the money was not wasted. On the way to the van, I popped into a spy store in Southampton and bought 2 Wi-Fi cameras and a beacon that I could stick in her car or in her purse. I installed the 2 cameras in the motorhome. I connected them to the Wi-Fi. One overlooked the bedroom and the other overlooked the living room and kitchen. I was able to plug them in, no batteries needed. They were motion sensitive and sent video directly to my new phone when activated. As an extra precaution, I took a coffee can off the shelf. It was some junk that had been lying around my workshop at home. I shook most of it out and pulled out some sleeping pills we had left over after Caroline's mom stayed for a week. I crushed them up and mixed them with the coffee. I didn't know how many to use, so I kept adding them until the white color was visible in the coffee. Next time I visit, I'll be sure to bring another jar with me. I sincerely hoped I was barking up the wrong tree. Driving back home, I drove past her college. A newly registered red Mercedes was parked in the parking lot. Next, I spent some time going through the paperwork. By this point, I was pretty sure she was having an affair, but I still wanted to leave a way out in case I was wrong. If I was wrong, I'd have to live with it. We got into bed and she started showing affection again, which was weird. I looked at her and said, "We haven't done it for a week and now you want it twice in 2 nights. What's wrong? Your boyfriend doesn't give you enough for a week?" The look of shock on her face was amazing. "Are you accusing me of having an affair?" She turned back to me. "I just wanted to know how my attention span has changed. Some months I only got sex on weekends and now twice in 2 nights I can barely keep up." She repeated to herself, "Are you accusing me of having an affair? Does the hat burn on the thief?" That silenced her. It was nonsense, of course, but there was a result. After that, she froze a bit, and we did nothing, not even hugging. Things were only getting worse for her. But I loved her, and planned a way out for her if she agreed. But I also planned to protect myself if she didn't. Thursday night, I came home and got everything ready. When I walked into the house, Caroline looked beautiful. I think she was trying to find a way to put on makeup and not seem too needy. It wasn't one of my favorite dinners, but pretty close to it. There was a bottle of wine, and it was a nice meal. We chatted about all sorts of nonsense, my projects, her college, the plans they were making to get out of the mess they were in, and how things were going. Then, to break the rhythm, I did something unusual. Usually, she cleans up the plates and puts them in the dishwasher, but this time, I did it. In a hurry, everything went into the dishwasher. Everything was out of place, but I didn't care. She was a little taken aback by this. I sat down at the table, leaned over to her, and asked her to give me both hands. She did. "Honey, we need to talk." Her face lowered. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I love you with all my heart. I don't know how I would live without you." I paused for a moment and then continued. But this Julian thing has got me worried. We've both worked so hard for this place to be a good place to live, for our son to grow up here, for us both to love this place. But if one of us fails, we both lose everything. So I've come up with a plan. You won't like it. I won't like it either. But it's the best I can do. She looked completely confused. That was good. I pulled a piece of paper and a pen out of my pocket, unfolded it, and showed it to her. At the top it said, postnuptial agreement. I could see she was starting to get angry. Why? She said. Look, in this country, if I cheat on you, I'm still left with half of everything. And vice versa, if you cheat on me, you get half of everything, including this house, motor home, and cars. Either way, you didn't cheat, I didn't cheat, so what's the problem? She paused for a moment and then came back. I don't want to. Why not? It's just not fair. And what do you have to hide? I don't have anything. I love you, and I would never cheat on you. I have nothing to risk, and if you have nothing to hide, then why do you bother? I just don't want to, she paused, and that shows a lack of trust. I pretended to think about it. I had already assumed that would be one of her answers, and she was right. I had an answer for her. It was bullshit, but I had an answer. But the signature shows that you believe in our marriage. Like I said, it was nonsense. I continued. What do you have to hide what you've done? If you haven't done anything and you're not trying to do anything, then why not? I'm happy I didn't cheat. I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to sign this. With those words, I took the pen and signed the paper. The only reason I can see that you won't sign this is because you cheated on me or are going to do so. I would never do that to you. She was in tears, guilt written all over her face. I was sure I had the right to do it. I just need confirmation. So why don't you sign? I asked. It's a big step. I need to think it over. You're talking about a long-term relationship forever. What if we just break up? She was right. It was a valid argument because I had already thought about it. I stood up. I'll let you think about it, and I'll think about what to do if we just break up. But I'm going to go to the club for a beer while I think about it. I'd already decided to go to the rugby club. It was always crowded on a Thursday. The thing about British rugby clubs is that they're full of knowledgeable people, doctors, lawyers, solicitors, psychiatrists, and the like. But the one I was looking for was a lawyer buddy of mine. We both used to play rugby together, but we were getting too slow and old, and that hurt even more. Now we play cricket together. I bought him a beer and asked him for a favor. I showed him my postnuptial agreement. Without looking at me, he said, "Do you think Caroline is having an affair?" I only smiled as he took his eyes off the paper and looked at me. I need to consult with my colleagues, he told me and left. Our rugby club has corners where discussions take place. There is a doctor's corner, and sometimes they get together in a circle. I suppose they discuss symptoms and things like that and the best way to deal with problems, no names, no pack, that sort of thing. Same with psychiatrists and lawyers. Us plebs get the rest of the lawyers. I can't complain. It seems to work. My friend came back to me. The first thing he said to me, and this surprised me, "You need to treat that crowd over there to one beer or two. They gave you advice and you paid them for it. Therefore, you're their client. And if your marriage turns to rat shit..." He paused with those words. He seemed to be a bit on edge when he wasn't usually talking to his friend. "Sorry, mate. If this goes down, she's going to lose all the best lawyers in this town, and all the ones left don't play rugby or cricket." He smiled at me. I went and paid for a few beers. He took me aside and we sat down at a table. He began. "And if everyone wrote their contracts like this, we'd all be out of business." I raised an eyebrow at him. He said, "You lay it out simply, without nasty words like reasonable or considering. You say that if either of the two named partners is caught having a sexual relationship with another person not named above, that agreement will come into effect. A sexual relationship is defined as placing any part of your body inside the body of another person not named above. Allowing someone not named above to place anything inside your body without objection, and so on and so forth." "Will that hold up in court?" I asked. "Our regular divorce attorney photographed this as an example, so I think yes. We can tweak a few things, but overall it's pretty solid. According to him, the financial side is pretty generous. The cheating party gets a third of all savings and a car. But the offended party who keeps the house gets 2/3 of the savings and the car. We have about $160,000 in savings, so the cheater won't be left destitute. That's when he gave me the bad news. It can't be retroactive. It can only be for the future. Otherwise, it would be seen as entrapment if she is or was having an affair. Why? If she is having an affair and you know or suspect it, it will look like you are taking advantage of that fact to get something from her, the house, and most of the savings, in which case it will be seen as entrapment. If, however, she is having an affair and will end it upon presentation of these papers, well, then you will have to find another reason to divorce her and keep the house. That wasn't part of my plan. Oh, damn it. But even if she was having an affair, it would stop and we'd go back to normal. And him, whoever he was, I'd deal with later. Well, that was it. I thanked him and arranged to meet up sometime next week. I paid my dues and headed home. I loved this woman I have lived with for the past 20-plus years. Yes, there were changes. Jason came, grew up, and then left. But we were good together. I was willing to give this woman one more chance. Maybe stupid, maybe foolish, but I had loved her for 20-plus years, so I would give her one chance. But if she said no, the hellhounds would come to visit. Well, actually, I could just sick the neighbor's grumpy Jack Russell Terrier on her. I came home and she was sitting in front of the TV. I don't think she was watching it. I could see she was crying. She didn't look as pretty as she usually did, but I still loved her. I sat down on the couch next to her and made her turn around to look at me. I could see that there were several thoughts swirling around in her head, but none of them made it to her mouth. So I began. Honey, this Julian thing is bothering me and I have to do this. I was at my buddy's club with my postnuptial agreement, and they said I can't make changes to it, that if you and I had an affair in the past, that's it. It's in the past. Anger flashed across her face. I ignored it and continued. I know 100% that I didn't cheat on you, and while I believe you didn't cheat on me, I can't prove it. If I have, it's in the past. So when you sign this, which I know you will, it's only moving forward. What's behind is in the past. I was completely overwhelmed by the outpouring of relief, love, and tears from the woman in front of me. The woman was broken. This further convinced me that she was cheating. Damn, what was I going to do now? I'd been up all night. If she was cheating, which I was now sure she was, I had no proof. What the hell am I supposed to do now? The woman I love, the mother of my son, the one I love. I hadn't slept well. If I'd been ready to forgive before, now, on a cold, dark night, was I so sure? I woke from a doze, not feeling rested. It smelled like toast and coffee. I managed to get downstairs, and there was Caroline fussing about, looking awfully pleased. There was a kettle in front of my chair and a nice, cozy tea pad on top of it. She brought the coffee and sat down opposite me, took my hands in hers and said, Darling, I'm sorry I didn't look at it from your point of view. I was thinking about it last night, and you're right. What that Julian did, and whoever he was with, was wrong. With those words, she took out my postnuptial agreement and a pen, a gel pen, not the cheap biro I used, and signed it, and more importantly, dated it. At that moment, I decided that everything that was in the past was in the past. I had to overcome all my anxieties and fears. Of course, there were still doubts, and I had to keep my eye on them and her. I kind of forgot about the weekend in the motorhome. There's always the next weekend, whatever. But then all the worries came back. Caroline came in on Friday night and said she had to go to Bristol for a meeting on Monday because one of the other admin assistants had dropped out. 95% I wanted to believe her. 95% I believed her, but the 5% check reared its ugly head. I sidelined her for the weekend, but I planned for it. For most of the weekend, Caroline was a happy bunny. On Saturday, I told her I was going to stop by the soccer club for a beer. She didn't bat an eye when I took the car, because it was only a quarter of a mile away. I could have walked that distance, and for heaven's sake, I don't like soccer. I never go to a soccer club. I play cricket and rugby. The euphoria must have clouded her view of the obvious. I popped over to another buddy of mine, wanted to borrow his car for Monday. It was all taken care of. We talked about her weekend trip. She would be traveling to Bristol by train first thing Monday morning and would be back home Tuesday night. A hotel had been booked for her, and she would let me know where it was, and I would always have her cell phone number if I needed to contact her. She was going to take the train, and I offered to give her a ride to the train station on my way to work, but she said there were several people going, and the plan was to drive to the college and get on a minibus together from there. I didn't quite understand the logic myself. She would have to drive past the train station to get to the college, but I abandoned that idea and added it to the list. It was a fantastic weekend. I think she nearly fucked me to death, and I did the best I could. She had trouble walking on Sunday. But in the back of my mind, I felt it was guilt sex. If my wife gets on the train and goes to Bristol, I'll be a happy man. And when she tells me what hotel she's staying in, perhaps she'll get a surprise visit in the evening from the man who loves her. But if she doesn't, she'll be let out by the little dog from the next room. Monday came and I was about to check in, but the thought was still swirling around in my head. I couldn't get rid of it. I managed to slip the tracker into her purse, which, like most women, was big enough to hide a dozen trackers in it, but as long as the tracker and her cell phone stayed in one place and headed west, I was a happy man. Well, mostly. I'll have to get over the guilt of doubting her. I'm sure I'll succeed. Another oddity. There was a small bag of milk in the refrigerator next to the nearly full 2-liter carton of milk. I asked Caroline about it. She said she had been asked to bring some. Why take milk to a hotel? Now I was sure there was something going on here. Using a very sharp knife and a syringe, I replaced about a third of the milk with vodka. She wouldn't have to drive anywhere, so there would be no risk to her license or getting into a drunk driving accident. My boss was a little pissed at me when I took another day off. I sat with my phone and tracked both her phone and the tracker. They both got to her work, and then her phone went off, but the tracker stayed on, and it started heading south towards the coast instead of west towards Bristol. Now my plans came into play. I called my buddy and arranged to pick up his car. I was going to leave mine at home along with my phone. I didn't want my car to be seen anywhere but here, and if anyone checked my phone, it would only be at our house. I set up the computer and made another device above the keyboard. It pressed random keys every couple seconds, and I logged onto the internet, and it stayed on the whole time someone was using it. I checked the cameras in the van. There was nothing there, nothing moving, but they were working. I called the college and asked what hotel my wife was staying at. I got the answer I didn't want. I was told she had gone on vacation for one day. That was the end of it. I'd better call next door and see if Jack Russell was free tomorrow night. Time for action. On the way out of the house, I went into the garage and got a tube of superglue and gloves. I got in my buddy's car and drove past the college, but the red Mercedes was gone. Was there another chance? I stopped by the local sex shop to buy some lubricant, a couple small plugs, and a pair of handcuffs. As I was leaving the store, I saw something else that caught my eye. I paid cash and tried not to leave any traces. When I got to the recreation park, I didn't pull into it, but parked my buddy's car on a nearby street and went inside. And yes, there was a red Mercedes estate there, but it wasn't parked by our van. On the way in, my phone made a few notification sounds, and since the only notification I had set up was from the cameras, I guessed what it was. I was now logged into the Wi-Fi system and could see what was going on in the van, and my worst fears were realized. She was there with him. They must have had quick sex. There were clothes lying everywhere. It was all being recorded on my phone. She got up and made coffee, moaning about how shitty it was, but as I'd removed all the tea, that was all that was left. He advised her to use more milk to mask the flavor. They both went back to bed, and I heard her say, "This is the last sex. I can't risk it. I'll lose most of what we've been working on. It's been fun and exciting with you. I will miss that excitement, but I love it. And I think he's starting to suspect something, although I don't know how we've been so careful, and I have to worry about the postnuptial agreement." "Come on, he'll never know. He's just a monkey with a wrench." I talked to the school lawyer. A postnup won't hold up in court. Either way, you're gonna miss the sex. Funny thing is, according to my rugby club friends, one of whom was a divorce lawyer, he said it would, and unfortunately, I was about to find out. "But I'll miss it," he said. "It was a good idea to use a motorhome. I may have to talk my old lady into buying one, just a fancy one. She's strict with my funds." but you've got that fancy Mercedes. It was her money. You don't think a college vice principal can afford that, do you? But I do it better than your monkey with a wrench. Don't berate him. It's none of your business. I just told you that I love him, that he's a good man, and you're trying to shit on him. And there's nothing wrong with sex. It's actually better. The only difference is the arousal. I never said anything about your wife and why you have to chase young girls. He ignored her words and continued. Maybe we can resume our relationship when he's not so suspicious. When I become a director, I'll need a new secretary, and you know what that will mean. I saw her smile at him. Yes, I know you'll want more of me. I'll think about it. She paused. No, this is the last time. I love him and I can't lose him. You've been fun to be with. She yawned. Must have made him yawn too. You know I'm feeling pretty tired, don't you? We have time for one more time and then we'll rest before we go out to eat. I should be ready for his call around 7 o'clock. I didn't look at them. It was too painful, but I took notes anyway. They didn't seem to have slept very long, and I didn't hear any sounds that would make me think she was enjoying it. I'm sure I was better than he was, or maybe it was because they were tired. It wasn't long before they fell asleep. While watching the video, I tapped sharply on the side of the motorhome, but no one moved. Good. I went into the house and found his pants, car keys, his phone, her phone, and purse. I took the bag I brought from the sex shop and the trash can. I put on the gloves I had with me. I wasn't going to leave fingerprints on anything I was going to touch, and I certainly wasn't going to touch it with my bare hands. I couldn't decide which to put on first, the cage or the handcuffs. I pulled out the cage cummerbund and the little brass lock. I only managed to secure one of the handcuffs on it. I enjoyed every click of the handcuffs ratcheting around his man parts, tightening them as tight as I could. Then I pulled out the superglue and dripped a drop or two on the brass lock and keyhole of the handcuffs. The next part was a little tricky. Good thing I'd guessed to bring lube with me. I inserted a plug in the ass of each of them. They were quite small, uncomfortable, I suppose, which is what I had hoped for. But I was very relieved when I pulled them out after the superglue on them dissolved. Perhaps I should have inserted the plugs before the cage and handcuff scene. Then I smiled. Who cares? It's all there already. I then fastened Caroline's left wrist to the other end of the handcuffs. Then I started pulling all the fabrics I could find from the motorhome. Towels, curtains, even rolled up the rug in front of the fake fireplace and threw it outside. Anything they could cover themselves with. Their clothes were already folded by the front door. I even took all the sharp knives out of the drawer so they couldn't cut the furniture. Then I took pictures of them on their phones. I had planned to use only her phone, but I managed to unlock his phone with my thumbprint. I then removed the passcode. The hardest part was getting the sheet they were lying on out. I had to cut it open. I even took the pillows and toilet paper. I also took away the coffee can and cups they used, the milk I kept. So, next step of the plan, I took his car, parked it next to the one I used myself, and moved the folding bike I had into it. I put all my clothes and things in a plastic bag in the back seat of his car. I wondered what to do with his car. There were no gravel pits nearby that I could drive it into. I didn't want to drive it into the river or the sea. Setting it on fire in the woods meant it would be found anyway. I wanted her to disappear altogether. No, there was something I'd read about on the internet. I drove the car to the edge of town where all the bad people hung out. I left it there with the doors unlocked and the keys on the dashboard. If this gang had been reasonable, it would have been quickly taken off the street and sold, replaced with license plates or dismantled for parts. But it would probably just be driven or wrecked. Whatever. I still had their phones, her purse, and his wallet with me. I took all the cash out of his wallet and her purse and put it in mine. There wasn't much in there, but it would pay for some of the sex toys I bought. His credit cards I left on the car seat in case some enterprising malcontent used them. I took her credit cards, broke them in half, and threw them down the nearest drain. His wallet and her purse went in the trash can. I pulled out my folding bike and headed towards the recreation park. Just out of the neighborhood where I felt a little calmer, I pulled out the piece of paper I'd brought from home and made a call from his phone. It struck me that I didn't even know his name. Maybe he was just the deputy director. I could look up his credit cards. Hello, is this the South Coast Gazette? Yes, who's speaking, please? Informant. We don't take information over the phone unless you can confirm who you are. I'm afraid I can't do that. I work for our local MP, and I'm afraid he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. These Greens are always so up in arms and think they are better than everyone else. He is now in a motorhome with another man's wife. I think there is some perversion here. MPs flirting with each other is nothing new, but the perversion adds to the excitement, and the fact that he's a local Greens MP adds even more spice. I guess they took the bait because they asked where it was happening, and I told them. I kept walking back towards the holiday park and found myself a nice, quiet, secluded corner from where I could see the motorhome and observe what was going on inside, which wasn't much. I saw a car pulled up not far from the motorhome. It was an odd place to park. I kept myself busy by sending little video clips from my phone to both of their phones, and then sent pictures and videos to everyone on their contact list, from their phones and even to the South Coast Gazette. This kept me busy for about 20 minutes, and then their phones got too busy. They kept calling and they kept getting messages. So I gave up and turned them off. I noticed a little movement on the camera. I think they were waking up. I quietly slipped around until I was at the motorhome and then gave it a quick tap. The look on their faces when they woke up was amazing. They were both screaming a lot, but his scream was a little different. It was probably due to the pain as it twisted his wrist, and I could go on for a long time about how they were running, waddling around the van, but there was nowhere to run. They managed to pull themselves together, and then they realized there were no clothes anywhere. He was just screaming, she was just crying. The noise made the man in the car alert. He got out and headed towards the motorhome. They must have spotted him. The cheater leaned out of the window and asked the man if he could help by calling the police, as they had a small problem. At that moment, he saw the man's camera in the car. Great, I thought to myself. This must be a journalist. The journalist asked what the problem was. He was told that they had a small incident and needed the police. The journalist turned out to be quite nice. After taking some pictures, he called the police. It was a quiet seaside town where nothing happens in early spring. They arrived pretty quickly. The pictures from inside were quite enlightening. The police called an ambulance. I was still able to watch what was going on, but oddly enough, the policeman's keys didn't work in the handcuffs. Perhaps it had something to do with the super glue. One of the policemen came with a set of bolt cutters, and the two lovers were separated. The bolt cutter was used for the lock on the cage, and that's when they discovered it was glued on, too. I must have spilled super glue on it. Oh dear, never mind. I think they would need something to dissolve the super glue. I don't know if there is such a thing. They were both taken to the hospital. I can only imagine how much stuff goes on there, so it was time for me to head home. I had one thing to do before I got home. I got out my toolkit and took the batteries out of both phones. I was tempted to throw them away, but they might come in handy later. It was already dark when I got home, and the first thing I did was try to call my wife from my regular phone, which had been sitting at home all day, next to the computer, but strangely enough, it answered right away. At least I registered an outgoing call. I moved the device away from the computer. I had a few pages of meaningless characters that I deleted, then went and filled out some online forms. I printed them out, signed one, and stuffed it in an envelope. Around 8:30 p.m., there was a knock on the front door. A young police officer was standing there. He asked me to confirm who I was. I confirmed, and then he asked where my wife was. I said she was in a hotel in Bristol, and I'd just tried to call her but had no answer. He showed me a picture of a woman on his phone and said, "Is that your wife?" "Well, yes, it looks like her, but she looks a bit rough." "I'm afraid she's not in Bristol, sir. She's at Christchurch Police Station. I believe she was in the motorhome you've got there." "I don't know why she would be there. She must be in Bristol for a meeting or something." "I'm afraid you'll have to ask her about that, sir. Can you go and get her?" "Where's her car? Why can't she get home? How did she get there? Can't she get back the same way?" "Again, I'm afraid, sir, you'll have to ask her that. And may I ask where you've been all day?" "I've been here. You can look at my computer log if you like. I was online all day. He wrote it down and took my word for it." "Okay. My buddy's car could be a problem if they checked it out, but I was hoping they wouldn't. Either way, until proven guilty, they would have to prove that I did something. I'm sure if they bothered to look, they'd find something. But I'm sure they have too many hate crimes to investigate." I got in my car, drove to Christchurch Police Station, walked in and said, "I've come to collect my wife." The constable asked if I had any clothes for her, because at the moment she was only wearing one of those silver foil sheets and a blanket. I replied that I didn't have any. That she needed clothes must have gotten lost in my memory. Perhaps the young policeman who came to my house didn't mention it. Or if he did, I didn't hear it. I told him I didn't have them. I must have forgotten when I was in a hurry to get here anyway. Where are her clothes? To which I got the usual reply, "You'll have to ask her, sir." They went and got her. She was a mess, her makeup was off, her hair mussed, she looked terrible. She ran up to me. She almost tried to hold out her arms until she realized she was naked under the sheet. I raised my hand when she was at arm's length and handed her the envelope. I think she guessed what was in it. She collapsed to the floor and cried. I had to help her up and walk to the car. One of the policemen came over and helped me open the doors and such. The nice policeman helped me put her in the car. I told him we were going to put her in the back seat. As we were putting her in the car, I saw a woman on the other side of the parking lot that I thought I recognized. She was hitting a man over the head with her purse. He was also wearing a silver blanket. The police officers helping me left us, rushed over to her and dragged her away. I headed for the house and she cried the whole way for 2 whole hours. But I wasn't going to go to our house. I didn't get along well with her parents, but we tolerated each other. They are very religious, and although I am not a religious person, I think the 10 Commandments, the Magna Carta, and the Sikh belief in the equality of one and all, as well as trying not to make the mistakes that humans make all the time according to the teachings of Cicero, are a good basic set of standards to live by. Although I must admit that I wasn't always able to do this, especially when I was younger, and in the last week for sure. I wasn't sure how they would take me showing up with her like this, after all the pictures and videos I'd sent them, and everyone else. When the car finally stopped, I walked over and opened the door, gave her my hand to help her out, and then she realized we were at her mom and dad's house, not our house. She looked shocked. She looked at me through her tears. "Please take me home." "No. Please, why not?" "I gave you the right to choose." "What choice?" she said through her tears. "To cheat or not to cheat. You chose to cheat. I suspected you were having an affair, but I had no proof, so I gave you a chance. If it was in the past, we could have moved on, grown old together. But you decided to keep cheating. They saw me pull up, her mother came out, and the first thing she did was slap her daughter in the face. Then she looked at me and asked, 'Is there any chance?' Not a chance." Caroline looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, please take me home." I looked at her, and with sadness in my voice said, "I gave you a choice, and you ignored it." Her father was there. He started to help her walk towards the house. I turned around and walked back to the car. Her mother followed me and asked me again if I had a chance. I pulled out my phone and played her a clip of him asking to resume the relationship after I stopped being so suspicious, and she replied, "Yes, I do. You'll want more of me." I'll think about it, but interrupted the clip before I could say no. I got in my car and drove away. Epilogue. The postnuptial agreement came into effect. She was advised a proper divorce lawyer. He was actually from my rugby club, but it was just advice. He told her that if she signed a postnuptial agreement and then voluntarily went and broke it, she had no leg to stand on. She didn't try to challenge him. I got the house, just over £100,000 and my MG. As you may have guessed, they both lost their jobs. They didn't have a moral reservation, they didn't need one. The reason was undermining the reputation of the college. I think the military used something like that. He got divorced. I think she took him to the cleaners. It was rumored that they had a prenup since she was quite wealthy when they married. He will never work in the education system again. Nor, I suspect, will she. I gave Caroline the motorhome. I wouldn't want to ride in it again. I believe she found a small job there, so I was told by Jason, who has nothing to do with her except occasional phone calls. I saw her at Jason's wedding. She looked awful. I was between girlfriends at the time and didn't bring any. She came up to me and said, "I'm sorry, can we try again?" I gave you a choice. You chose cheating. I turned around and walked away.